honored as well as excited and so glad that today is the day, because the next person that I'm going to bring up to the podium asked me to be the hostess, I want to say in 2014. She came up to me probably around March of 2014 and said that she wanted me to be the host for 2016. And I'm like, okay, Sophia. So every week she would make sure that everything was going as planned, and I am excited to be here. So we're going to have Sophia Hansen, who is the General Manager of the Department of Community Service of New Castle County, come up and greet us.
Thank you, Wayna. It was actually March 2015. But I did remind you weekly, so I'll cop to that. Welcome to New Castle County's second annual Great Women in History program. And if we can get a round of applause to the man who made this possible, County Executive Thomas P. Gordon. I was a little saddened today to learn that former First Lady Nancy Reagan passed on. I don't know if you had heard or not. She was 94 years old. And I always remembered First Lady Reagan for her war on drugs, a campaign that was relevant to children in my generation and is still relevant today. And on the vein of thinking about the White House, I'm thinking how great it is for 2016. We have a woman running for president. But in thinking about that, it came to mind, how many women have run for president? Well, I knew about the first, Virginia Woodhull, and obviously about Shirley Chisholm. But were there others? And there were. And I actually met one and didn't know it. I met Barbara Jordan when I was a child. I never knew she ran for president. She was a candidate. So I would like to see, we have a prize here for anyone under the age of 18, and without using Wikipedia, that can tell me how many women have run for president in the United States of America. Please stand up if you'd like to take a guess. Stand on up. Call out your number. 5 is wrong. What's your number, honey? I just gave you 3. All right. Okay, Bella, I see you in the back. No. You have to be under 18, ma'am. We'll be checking identification. All right, in the back, stand up. Call. Oh, wait a minute. Right here in the front. What's your number?
7.
Come on, keep moving. Next guess. And this is our history. We don't know it. That's why we are here today. No. Come on, somebody. Give me a big number. Over here in the back to the right. 15. Well, you're the closest, so I'm going to give you the prize. Christine, come on up, sweetheart. Let's give her a round of applause. Here you go. Congratulations. The number, because no one would guess this because I was shocked, I had to triple check it, is 35. And no one knows it. I'm like, you know, this is why we need to have these events. That's why we have the Frida Kahlo table. We have the Billie Jean. You know, we need to learn our history. So with that, I hope I inspire you all to research who those 35 great women in history were. And thank you very much.
Everybody's in shock, right? I'm like, 30. Well, when she said 14 and she said you're close, I was like, okay, 15. But 35, that's phenomenal. All right, so I'm going to ask the man who made this all possible, our County Executive, Thomas P. Gordon, to come up and give us some words.
Thank you and good afternoon. Welcome to our beautiful park here at Rockwood. I'd also like to thank the Girl Scouts of Chesapeake Bay for presenting the colors. They did a fabulous job. And we're honored that you all joined us here today at the celebration of Women's History Month. I want to personally thank the Community Service General Manager, Sophia Hanson, and all of our staff, and her husband, Tom Hanson, who does half the work to make all this possible. So, thank you all. Women today still face a lot of challenges between career and family. But the greatest women in history, like the ones we're going to celebrate today, have proven their strength to manage it all. And again, let's get on, and I want to thank you all for coming, and I think it's going to be a very enjoyable show, as it has been. Thank you all.
All right, if you don't mind, would you be so kind and give County Executive Thomas P. Gordon another hand clap? All right, next to the podium is Councilman Penrose Hollins.
Good afternoon. I'm very honored to join all of you here this afternoon as we pay tribute to contributions of women in Newcastle County and throughout this country. I'm also very pleased that one of the people that are being honored here is Stephanie Kwolok, who was an outstanding scientist at DuPont, who invented Kevlar. And when I first went to work for DuPont, I had an opportunity to work in pioneering research with Stephanie. So it's a personal kind of a thing to see that she is recognized for the work she did in the area of science at the DuPont company. Also, we're very privileged here today to have with us great women in history in the persons of Delta Sigma Theta. They have a lot of their members who have made significant contributions throughout the period of Delta Sigma Theta. In addition to that, we also have great women of the future in the Chesapeake Bay Girl Scouts. Let's give them another hand. In Newcastle County, I think it's evident that we are continuing to remove the barriers of gender. We're going to transcend the usual barriers and the boundaries that have held women back and continue to move women forward along with the Chesapeake Bay Girl Scouts and Delta Sigma Theta, and that gives me a lot of hope for our country going forward. God bless you, and thank you very much.
All right, so the next person that's coming to the podium is a songbird. I've known her for quite some time, and every time I'm in her presence, it just does something to me. So I want you to all welcome Leonette Davis Collins as she comes to sing The Greatest Love of All.
I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. Give them a sense of pride to make it easier. Let the children's laughter remind us how we used to be. Everybody is searching for a hero. People need someone to look up to. I never found anyone to fulfill my need. A lonely place to be. And so I learned to depend on me. I decided long ago never to walk in anyone's shadow. If I fail, if I succeed, at least I know as I believe, no matter what they take from me, they can't take away my dignity, because the greatest love of all is happening to me. And I found the greatest love of all inside of me. The greatest love of all is easy to achieve when you're learning to love yourself. is the greatest love of all. And if by chance that special place that you've been dreaming of, if it leads you to a lonely place, find your strength in love.
Well, I'm definitely excited for our next part of our program, which involves 3 extraordinary ladies. The first one that I'm going to introduce to you is Dr. Velma Scanterbury White. She is from Christiana Care Health Service. Dr. Scanterbury is the Associate Director of the Kidney Transplant Program at Christiana Care. She has served as the national spokesperson for Linkages to Life, which is an initiative to address the shortage of African American organ donors. She became the nation's first African American female kidney transplant surgeon. In her career, she has performed more than 1,000 kidney transplants, and I'm sure, I Googled all the ladies, so I'm sure when this was written, I'm sure she's done more than 1,000 by now. She encourages the youth. I love this because in one of the pages that I looked at, some youth were asking her, like, what can we do to be like you? Or how do we aim for our goals? And she said to them to follow their dreams by liking what they do and surrounding themselves with people who make a positive impact on their lives. So it does matter who you hang around with, right? I was getting ready to say amen like I was in church. I caught myself. I would love for Dr. Scanterbury to come up to the podium. Please give her a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Mrs. Dobson, to Mr. Gordon, to Sophia for inviting me here, to the county council members, and to all my friends and Delta sisters out there and everyone who came out to support me. I really appreciate the opportunity to come here to speak today. It's a great privilege for me to be honored in such a way to be considered one of the great women in history. We all have great women in our lives, and for me, the very first woman in my life and my influence that influenced me was my mother. Without a doubt, a phenomenal woman. She was married at age 15, and by age 30, she had 7 kids. Her goal in life was to see that her kids had a better education, and we were born in Barbados. At the age of 40, Barbados became independent, and my mom no longer under the sovereignty of England, and the first 3 of my siblings were all sent to England to further their education. And so with a new gates open, more or less, now my mom had a further dream. She wanted to spread her wings, and she wanted to provide better opportunity. So for her, coming to the United States provided her with that opportunity. And so two years later, she paved the way for us. She had a vision, she was determined to follow that vision, and she was driven. And so she left everything behind in Barbados, left us, came here, found a job, worked, went to school, talking about having a second career. As a nurse, she went to school, she brought us here, and so that was my opportunity. She made it possible because she knew I wanted to be a doctor from the time I was age 10, and she was determined to provide that opportunity. And so I came to Brooklyn, went to high school in Brooklyn, And despite what I thought was excelling, my guidance counselor told me, get a job. You're not college material. Perhaps go to school at night. And my mom said, absolutely not. You're going to college. So I applied to 2 colleges. One was about 5 miles from my house, and the other one, which was Long Island University, and the second college was Barnard in Manhattan. And so it was a no-brainer. I got a full scholarship to LIU for college. And so I did well, went on to college, made a dean's list, and so I knew I wanted to study medicine. That was an obstacle, but God helped me through that obstacle. I got to college, and I applied to medical school. I applied to Meharry in Tennessee, got accepted there, was absolutely thrilled, and applied to Yale. One of my church members said, why don't you apply to Columbia? I said, well, they probably wouldn't take me. He said, what do you have to lose? Just send in the application. So I applied to Columbia University. And he talked about the stars were aligned. It was a cold day in New York that day. Must be 20 degrees with a wind chill factor of -10. I was all dressed up. I'm not sure what I probably had on a purple suit that I made, because I like purple, you can tell. Had my hair done, sprayed it with a lot of hairspray, because 160th Street in Manhattan was pretty windy. Everything went well. Wasn't really thinking about, I knew I probably wouldn't get in, so I was more laid back, enjoyed the experience. And lo and behold, I got accepted to Columbia. And so that was the least, it boosted my self-confidence, and I went back to my college, and I went into the office, and they were talking about who got into medical school, and I came through the door, and I said, I got into Columbia, and I just also got into Yale. It's like, I don't know where to go. Got Yale, Columbia. Medical school was hard, much more than I expected. I mean, I prepared in college, did all these courses, think I would be better prepared in medical school. And that first semester of medical school sort of wiped out everything within the first hour of everything I studied in college. But I went through medical school, gross anatomy, knew I wanted to be a surgeon. Gross anatomy turned me on, formaldehyde, dead bodies, all that stuff was really great. And got to my 3rd year to apply to surgery residency. And my preceptor, who writes the letter of recommendation for you for residency, said, I'm not writing you a letter for surgery. You don't have what it takes. You're too short. You can be a dermatologist or a pediatrician, but I will not write you a letter of recommendation for surgery. And so I was doomed, more or less, because without that letter, I wouldn't make it. But I met the second other woman in my life, and that was Dr. Barbara Barlow. She was a pediatric surgeon who I rotated on her service as a medical student in surgery, and I wanted to be just like her. And because of her, I got into Harlem Hospital's general surgery residency. And she took me under her wings, and I rotated with her, and I knew I was going to be a pediatric surgeon, and she influenced me. She was very dynamic, very skillful. She operated on these little tiny babies, little incision hernia repairs, no more than 1.5 inches, with the little pinkies up in the air. And I said, that's kind of dainty. I could do that too. And so I wanted to be a pediatric surgeon, and so she pointed me in the right direction. And so it really is important to really have people who can help you along the way. She was a mentor to me. She provided me with guidance. She ensured that I was going to succeed. And so with her backing, I went to an interview in Pittsburgh, University of Pittsburgh, for pediatric surgery. And the chief of surgery said at that point, you need more research. Come back here, work with Tom Starzl, do 2 years of research, you'll get into pediatric surgery. Went back to meet with Starzl for interview for transplant surgery research. He said, if Mark Roberts said it, so it's so. Come on, let's go have lunch. That was the end of my interview. And so that was my introduction to transplantation surgery as a stepping stone to become a pediatric surgeon. However, I got swayed by the wayside, realized I could be a transplant surgeon and a pediatric surgeon at the same time, sort of married the two, ended up as a transplant surgeon. So for me, as one of the things while I was a transplant surgeon was that I was the only first female in surgery on staff at University of Pittsburgh. And it was very discouraging because, you know, for my male partners, it was, way to go, you did a great job. For me, it was, so who helped you with that case? It was obviously a lack of ability, that belief, and so I really had very little self-esteem. We had a fellowship where we were told all the negative things we did. And so one of my fellows said our motto was affix, blame, and criticize. That was the ABC of our fellowship. And I had a sign that I put on my mirror in my bathroom that got me through those years, and it said, "Yes, I can." Wow. And yes, I can, because every morning I knew that with God's help, I can rise above these negativity, I can rise above the criticisms, I can trust in myself a little bit more, and believe that I could finish that job. And I say that because I had that slogan before Obama took it from me. And so that's my story, with women who were determined. My mom, and I got my stubbornness from her. We often fought in terms of doing things, but she was stubborn and determined, and so was I. She had a vision, and she followed that vision. At the age of 44, she took on a new career to make roads for herself and her family in a different country, leaving the beautiful beaches and sunshine of Barbados to come to the cold, dreary, snow-drenched railroad apartment in Brooklyn. That was not a lot of fun, but it paved the way, and it provided me with an opportunity to be who I am today. For Barbara Barlow, who believed in me when everyone else thought I was too short, too little. And I tell people now, you know, they're short men who are surgeons. Nobody says anything about them. That's why we have stepping stools in the OR. 1, 2, you know, you can make yourself as tall as you want to. Okay. So I have to thank those women who allowed me to be where I am today, my mom and Dr. Barlow. I thank all the men who made it possible, and I thank the men and the rest of the people who crossed my path, who criticized me, because it made me stronger. It made me more determined. If you told me I can't do it, I'm going to prove you wrong, because I'm going to try to do it anyway. And to the young people out there, follow your dreams. Reach for the stars. Believe in yourself. And as I said before, if there are those kids who you play with who don't think you could be an astronaut, oh, you can't be this, you can't be that, get rid of them. They're not your friends. Find some other friends who are going to say, I'm going with you, girl. Okay? Thank you.
Wow. She's such an inspiration. And what she said is so true. Like, I don't like taking no for an answer. No to me just means that I asked the wrong person and that I need to keep on asking until I get my yes. All right, so let's give her another hand clap. All right, the next person to come up to the podium is Joanne Bay Longett, who is a PhD, and she is the Poet Laureate of Delaware. Joanne's she is Delaware's 16th Poet Laureate and State Poetry Ambassador. She reads her work and teaches poetry around the state to young people and adults in libraries and schools, at festivals, conferences, and colleges. Joanne believes that poetry and the arts are crucial in education. If you would be so kind and give her a hand as she comes to the podium.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here, so very honored to be here. Anytime that I am asked to represent poetry, it's just beyond my wildest dreams, because I think it's an art that we all need more of. It's a way to notice, it's a way to pray, it's a way to dream, it's a way to tell your story, which is very important. And so I want to thank Sophia Hansen, Mr. Gordon, County Council, for having me here. It's an honor. And I made a handout because I know that poetry is It's a kind of song. It's not the same kind of song Leonette did, but we'll have another musical interlude in a different way with language. It's a song, but I know it can also be kind of intense. So I made some handouts, and I especially was hoping that any Girl Scouts here who are interested in the poets that I'm introducing today would be able to take home a handout. So I'm not going to read everything about these poets, because you'll see it in front of you, but I will tell you a little bit about them. So I'm just going to introduce 3 poets, and then I will read a poem of my own last. It's actually on the first page of the handout, but I'm going to skip the page too. So when I was in school as a graduate student, I was given a lot to read as an English major undergraduate, English major again as a graduate student, and hardly any women at all, and no women poets except Emily Dickinson. And what was up with that? And in a way, too, although I was studying fiction, I didn't realize till years later that I had never really been given anyone to read who was a person of color or who looked like me. And so I realized, like, years later, of course, my graduate department at the University of California, Irvine, was at the time an all-male, all-white male professorship. There were no women in the department. And I did go outside the department to the French department and the other literary departments to find women to study with. But at any rate, I came across this poem on page 2, and for those of you that don't have a handout, it's fine. These are story poems and kind of chant poems. There's this woman named Janice Mirikitani. She's a Sansei, which means first-generation Japanese-American, and I came across her work just really a few years ago. She was named the 2nd poet laureate for the city of San Francisco in the year 2000. Oh, that reminds me, I should say, too, that I was Poet Laureate of Delaware from 2008 to 2015, and I'm very happy to say that there are new people in the appointment. We have Poets Laureate. We are the first state ever to have dual Poets Laureate in the form of the twin poets, Al Mills and Nnamdi Chukwu. I always mess up Nnamdi's name. He smiles at me. So, and they are spoken word poets, and very interested also, by the way, as an aside, in teaching young people to tell their stories. And that's been my focus, too, as Poet Laureate, and as a person who has been a teacher and an educator all her life. So Janet Mirikitani was all her life an advocate for the poor and disenfranchised people of California, and did a lot of social activism. And it's interesting, too, that as an infant, she and her family lost everything. In 1941, they were taken from their home and sent, like a lot of Japanese Americans, to a concentration camp. Her family were sent to Arkansas during World War II. But she went on to become a very interesting writer. And this is a poem which is about a daughter leaving. It's a mother-to-daughter poem, and it has a little epigraph. It's called For a Daughter Who Leaves, and it's a story poem. And here's the epigraph. More than gems in my comb box, shaped by the god of the sea, I prize you, my daughter. That was a quote from Lady Otomo, 8th century Japan. And here's the poem. A woman weaves her daughter's wedding slippers that will carry her steps into a new life. The mother weeps alone into her jeweled sewing box, slips red thread around its spool, the same she used to stitch her daughter's first silk jacket embroidered with turtles that would bring luck, long life. She remembers all the steps taken by her daughter's unbound quick feet, dancing on the stones of the yard among yellow butterflies and white-breasted sparrows. And she grew, legs strong, body long, mind independent. Now she captures all eyes with her hair combed smooth and her hips gently swaying like bamboo. The woman spins her thread from the spool of her heart, knotted to her daughter's departing wedding slippers. So I love poetry because it's a way for us to tell a story, and nothing much happened in that story. A daughter grew up and got married. But so much happened in that story. And you know, it's a wonderful reminder with poetry and with all art, really, that every little thing that happens in our lives is important. I love story poems. The next reason I love poetry is because it can be very quiet and it can be a prayer. And on the next page, there's a poem by a poet named Joy Harjo. I had the privilege of reading with about a year ago when a magazine that I contributed a poem to did an homage to her, a tribute collection to her. Joy Harjo is a person of the Muskogee Creek Nation. She's a native person, from the original peoples of this continent, born in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She's written many, many books. She's done so much and won a lot of awards. She has a 2012 memoir called Crazy Brave, and she's an extraordinary woman and artist and poet. And my favorite book by her is She Had Some Horses. And this is a prayer poem from She Had Some Horses. It's called Remember. Remember the sky that you were born under. Know each of the stars' stories. Remember the moon. Know who she is. Remember the sun's birth at dawn. That is the strongest point of time. Remember sundown and the giving away tonight. Remember your birth. How your mother struggled to give you form and breath. You are the evidence of her life and her mother's and hers. Remember your father. He is your life also. Remember the earth whose skin you are. Red earth, black earth, yellow earth, white earth, brown earth. We are earth. Remember the plants, trees, animal life, who all have their tribes, their families, their histories too. Talk to them. Listen to them. They are alive poems. Remember the wind, remember her voice. She knows the origin of this universe. Remember you are all people, and all people are you. Remember, you are this universe, and this universe is you. Remember, all is in motion, is growing, is you. Remember, language comes from this. Remember, the dance language is. That life is. Remember. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Joy Harjo. And that's a wonderful example of a poem which it's magic, isn't it? It's made out of kind of nothing but everything, language. It's abstract. We can't hold it like an apple, but it's what makes us human. It's magic to me. That's why I love language. That's why I put that quote on the first page. It's a funny quote by Billy Collins. The joy in writing poetry is being down on your hands and knees. Down on your hands and knees with language. Like they say, get down with your toddlers and play on the floor. I feel like I'm down on the floor with words when I'm writing. I love that feeling. Another reason I love poetry is because it will pay homage to the big things, like in Joy Harjo's poem. She says, remember the wind, because it knows the story of the universe. It's as if there's this continuum from the Big Bang all the way to now, and all of us sitting here. And there's that wind. That wind was always there. So poetry talks about these big ideas that we can't wrap our heads around at all. You know, even though they ended up proving Einstein's last, what would you call it, theory last month? Well, here's the theory, a theory about an onion. So the other reason, the last reason today anyway, that I love poetry is because it pays homage to the most simple entities. In this case, it's Naomi Shihab Nye, who is a Palestinian American, born in St. Louis, but she calls herself a wandering poet. She currently lives part of the year in San Antonio, however, her main home. And she's written so many books, and she's quite wonderful. There's a wonderful book of children's poetry that she put together, she edited, where it's dual language that I love, called A Tree is something-er than you are. A tree is bigger than you are. That's not quite right. But anyway, that's one of my favorite books by her, but I put 2 more books on this paper. One is called A Maze Me, Poems for Girls. And her most recent book that's gotten attention is a novel, fiction, called The Turtle of Oman, which is a story about a little boy who doesn't want to move to the U.S. from Oman. She is paying homage to a simple thing here, The Traveling Onion. And it also has an epigraph from the Better Living cookbook. So the writer of the cookbook says, it is believed that the onion originally came from India. In Egypt, the onion was an object of worship. Why, I haven't been able to find out. From Egypt, the onion entered Greece and went on to Italy, and thence to all of Europe, and of course to the New World too. So here's her poem. When I think of how far the onion has traveled just to enter my stew today, I could kneel and praise all small, forgotten miracles, crackly paper peeling on the drain board, pearly layers in smooth agreement, the way the knife enters onion and onion falls apart on the chopping block, a history revealed. And I would never scold the onion for causing tears. It is right that tears fall for something small and forgotten. How at a meal we sit to eat, commenting on the texture of meat or herbal aroma, but never on the translucence of the onion, now limp, now divided, or its traditionally honorable career, for the sake of others, disappear. Now, I love Naomi Shihab Nye. All her poems are like that. There's another poem I love, I do in classes a lot. It's called Famous. And you'll have to look it up. If you look on Wikipedia for Naomi Nye and Google Famous, you'll see this poem that she wrote because she went to visit a classroom and the kids asked her if she was famous, if she was a famous poet. Now, most poets are not famous. That's not a thing. It's not a thing that we lust after, her fame. Although, maybe just a little bit. A little bit's good. But at any rate, she says, in the beginning of that poem, Famous, she says, I think I want to be famous the way a button is famous. Because everybody knows what a button is. So the last poem I'm going to read you is a personal poem. And I wrote on this page that there's a lot of reasons that I love being a poet. even though every time I sit down to try to write, it's very scary. And I'll say that because when the page is blank and when you don't feel confident about yourself, and a lot of writers are this way, it's hard to put yourself out there and you're up against the giants of history. And you go, what do I have to say that they haven't said better? But you kind of fight through that. And so one of the reasons I've always loved writing is because even when I start out not knowing what in the world I'm saying and feeling like I don't know what I'm talking about, always somehow without fail I arrive at some wisdom that I didn't know I had. So when you write, if you're a writer, I'm sure there's a lot of writers out there, you know that if you keep following the language and believing in that magic, that continuum that we have as humans, our language makes us human because we can communicate. If you follow that continuum of language, you get to a knowledge that you have. You just didn't know you had it, and it's that revealing that happens in a poem. So it's very scary because it's about questioning yourself, but it's also very rewarding because it's about knowing who you are. And I'm going to read a poem. And in school, we used to talk about reading between the lines of poems, although I didn't like taking them apart too cruelly. But if you read between the lines of this poem, you'll probably understand that I lost my parents when I was very young. I was 16. And I'm going to pay a little homage to my mother. I'm the third of 12 children. And she died when she was 40. So the other thing about my father, he's very enigmatic, but not unlike a lot of immigrants of his generation. Once he came to San Francisco in the United States to make his way as an American, as a Filipino immigrant, he did not want to go back in history. When I used to question him about, where did you come from? What was it like? What was it like in Macabebe, Pampanga? And he would say, we speak English, we're American, I don't need to talk about that. So he was very mysterious to me because I longed to know more about the Philippines, and he wouldn't tell me much. But what I found from writing is that losses and confusion, and I had a lot of identity confusion when I was a kid in high school. Me, my brother, and my sister were the only 3 Asian kids in a very Southern conservative, at the time, all-white high school that was becoming integrated in the early 70s. So I didn't know who I was, or I felt I didn't know who I was a lot of the time, but when I wrote this poem, which was 3 pages long and condensed down into a 14-line sonnet, ultimately, I realized that my losses were what really is giving me a map to who I am, that they're not losses, they are gifts, ways to ask more questions. So you have to turn your losses and your confusions and your wonderment into questions, and that's the map. That's the map that language helps you draw. History textbook, America. I'd search for Philippines in history class. The index named 1 page, moved on to Pierce. The making of America marched past my enigmatic father's place of birth. The week he died, some man we didn't know called up. This is his brother. One more shock. Phoning for him. He died 3 days ago. The leaden, black receiver did not talk. My uncle never gave his name or town. We never heard from him. Was it a dream? The earpiece roar dissolved to crackling sounds. A dial tone erased the Philippines. And yet, my world grows huge with maps, crisscrossed, my history alive with all I've lost. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Our next guest is Carol Eggert. She's a retired general and vice president of Comcast. Her role is to work collaboratively across Comcast, NBC Universal to provide strategic leadership to all aspects of programs and outreach, engaging the military and the veteran community, including recruiting, hiring, and building talent at all levels of the organization. Carol has more than 30 years of military experience. And I looked on, I think it was your Facebook page. You said, and I love this, you had you took a picture of a tree, and behind the dark tree there was a lighter tree. And your status said, if we look, there is always a sign of hope in a sometimes dark world. Let's give Carol applause while she comes up to the podium. You're very welcome.
Well, that'll teach you. You better know what you put on Facebook. Girls, you hear that in the back? Actually, that was a very, very wonderful day. It was a dark, dreary winter day. And of course, I always have my phone in case I don't make it back or I collapse when I'm out on one of my hikes or walk. And I saw this white sycamore. You know how the sycamores, they just simply reflect the light. So very, very dark winter landscape with this beautiful white tree. And I was just so moved, I didn't realize it was available to everybody, but that's okay. That's a good message. That's a good message. So thanks for sharing that, and thanks so much for inviting me. I'm just thrilled to be here and to share a little bit about what I think some great women in history are. And thank you certainly to Newcastle County, to the state of Delaware for recognizing the contributions of women. I'm a little bit intimidated, although I'm honored to follow these two wonderful women here on the podium. Although, as I said, I'm a little bit intimidated to follow them, and certainly to be your last speaker. So I hope my remarks will keep you on the edge of your seat, but hopefully because you're interested, not because you're in a hurry to get out of here. But I would like to share with you the story of what I consider to be two great women who have influenced my life, and also how they changed the culture of the Army. Now I want you to keep in mind that the Army of 2015 is almost 1 million strong. And when you consider the Army family, what we think of as our Army civilians and our soldiers' families, you're nearing 10 million. So imagine the challenge of changing a culture of an organization that size. But these two women did just that. Over here on the bottom, you will see Lieutenant General Patricia Horoho. She was the first female and the first officer from the Nurse Corps, so she was a nurse, to be appointed as the Army Surgeon General. So let me first give you a couple of explanations. So Lieutenant General is a 3-star general, outranked only by a 4-star general, of which there can never be more than 7 in the Army. Right now we have 6 4-star generals. So that's pretty impressive right there. In short, she's just really, really important. As the commanding general of the Surgeon General for the Army, she provides advice and assistance to the Secretary of the Army on all healthcare matters pertaining to the U.S. Army and to the military healthcare system. Everything from battlefield medicine to pediatrics and obstetrics. When she was appointed by President Obama in 2011, she remarked that a decade of war has left a fighting force with both physical and psychological scars, and we are dedicated to identifying and caring for those soldiers who have sustained those psychological and physical traumas associated with a long and protracted war. And she added that we will never leave our war fighters to stand alone. And now the picture on the top is Lieutenant General Nadja West. General West is a physician, and she is the first African-American lieutenant general and the highest-ranking woman yet to graduate from West Point. She is an experienced physician, and when promoted, General West said, well, you know, I never really thought much about being first. My parents taught me to work hard, to do the best I can, and that things will just work out. I am just really honored to have this position. But she did say, if anything, I hope I can be an inspiration to anyone or any group that has not seen themselves in these types of positions. We all want people who look like us doing certain things to give us inspiration. She said, I only hope that I can inspire someone to be able to say, I can do that. I can do what she does. What an amazing thought coming from General West. But both of these women, while they have very impressive backgrounds, I'd like to share with you how they changed this culture of the Army and contribute significantly to the overall health of our Army force and our Army families. For me, the Army's always played a significant role in my attitude towards wellness. I was not into sports in school. In fact, I was in the band, and the most exercise I ever got was marching around the field during halftime. And even when I joined the Army at 17, let's just say quite a while ago, in the Women's Army Corps, we were not issued weapons, and our physical fitness uniforms were starched, and they were a skort. So you never wanted to get them wrinkled, let me just say that, because you had to wash them and starch them all over again. But all that changed, and physical fitness became a critical component of our military training. And often, as one of the very few women, I took it on myself to always exceed the minimum standards of physical fitness. We had to take a physical fitness test twice a year, and we had to weigh in twice a year. Now, of course, luckily for me, those standards were aged and gender normed. But let me just again say, I am not an athlete. But I want to share with you a little bit about General Horojo's program that she developed to guide our soldiers in this challenge to achieve wellness. She created a program called the Performance Triad, or what we call the P3. And I gave you some handouts there on your tables to help guide you through this very interesting and useful program. And there's also a few more materials out there in the exhibit room. The Performance Triad is a comprehensive Army initiative that gets back to the basics of health: sleep, activity, and nutrition. It's designed to build and sustain the soldier's health in order to optimize personal and unit performance, resilience, and readiness. Can you imagine any other organization that must focus so heavily on wellness? If our soldiers are not well, they cannot protect our nation. And it's a triad because we have to focus on all three components of the triad equally. You can't just pick one. And I know you're all thinking, I'm going to pick sleep. What we try to do with the Performance Triad is to bring sports science into this idea of sleep, activity, and nutrition so that we can all perform at our best. It's designed so that soldiers can make very small changes that will take very small challenges that will add up to big changes in their life. So it's doable. Now, I recognize that the hardest of these is sleep. The Army struggles with sleep. Did you know that athletes view sleep as their secret weapon? I want you to understand why sleep is so critical. Why are we biologically supposed to spend 1/3 of our lives in bed sleeping? The reality is that 97% out of 100, or 97% of you out there, require 7 to 8 hours of sleep to perform at your best. The reality is that if you get less than 5 hours of sleep 5 days in a row, you will have a 20% deficit in cognitive function. For my grammar friends, that means you're 20% dumber. Which is, you might not have known this, the equivalent of being legally drunk. I wonder if we're going to start having sleep police. And I'm sure our surgeon here knows very much about this and the criticality of sleep so that we can all perform at our best. But the reality is we struggle not only with our quantity of sleep, but we struggle with our quality of sleep. So even if you feel you can improve the quantity, due to whatever reasons, please look at how you can improve the quality of your sleep. Let's make sure that the sleep you are getting is better. So as I said, the P3 Triad is about making small changes that can really create a big difference. So I'm going to give you the first P3 challenge right now. I want you to go home tonight and actually count how many things light up at night in your bedroom. In 2015, the average is 10 to 15 in people's rooms actually light up at night, 10 to 15 objects. Now, what do you need to get a good night's sleep? You need dark, cool, and quiet. And our bedrooms are starting to look like Christmas trees. And the reality is, blue light is actually the worst of all light. Red, green, and blue. Blue light has a wavelength that is designed to actually keep you awake. Did you know that on the space station, when the astronauts are to wake up, they turn on the blue lights? And then, an hour before they want them to go to bed, they turn off the blue lights. Because it takes a while for your brain to adjust from blue light. Did you all know that your phones and your devices have blue light filters that you can turn on? And it really can help adjust. If you're one of those types that are reading your email late at night, at least put a blue light filter on your phone. That should help you. If you've ever wondered why Facebook and Twitter, why are those logos blue? It's not by chance. It's because when you're staring at your tablet, that blue light coming out at you causes you not to want to put it down. You stay engaged. It's the science behind why those logos are blue. Gamers? Anybody out here gamers? Those games that you just can't stop playing, I want you to observe they probably have way more blue light than anything else because it's designed, once again, to keep you playing and to keep you engaged. So what I want you to do as your challenge is to count the things in your bedroom that light up and get rid of them. Turn them off. Turn them upside down. Put tape over them. Lay a towel over them. I actually called a company and said, how do I turn this darn light off on the TV box? And there is a way to do it. So it's off on my box. How does this matter when you sleep? Well, you sleep in 90-minute cycles. And at the end of 90 minutes, you somewhat wake up. And the lights in your room, if they're on, will cause you to actually come out of your total sleep and you'll become much more restless. So when you think of the triad, I want you to think of your body as an engine. And the three things in the triad are your check engine lights. So sleep's your RPMs. It controls your reaction times and your decision making. And it's the solid foundation moving forward. Activity, it becomes your miles per hour. So being active, being fit, being well determines how fast and for how long you can go. It determines your ability to sustain action and to give you the strength you need for those long days. And nutrition, don't think of nutrition as anything but fuel. Well, no, that's not true. There's a lot of good things about nutrition. I'm thinking of chocolate cake and all that kind of thing, but really, it is there, it's designed to fuel your body. And the fuel choices you made in the last 24 to 72 hours determines just exactly how much fuel you have in your tank and how long you can go. And so, as I said, it's a triad and it all works together. So I'm just going to touch a little bit more on sleep since that's one of the most challenging. Did you know that short-term memories become long-term memories only in the second half of the night? So if you're studying for a class, the last thing you read at night is the first thing your brain pushes into long-term memory. So the last thing in short-term memory is the first thing in long-term memory. So studying before bed is a good thing. But you can't pull all-nighters because you must sleep on it. Because short-term memories don't become long-term memories until hours 6, 7, and 8. So don't get up early to study because it's not going to be there. And you've probably heard that some high schools are looking at changing their start times from 8 to 8:30. And studies have shown that when the start time moves 30 minutes, the whole school's GPA raises by a letter grade. 30 extra minutes of sleep makes you smarter. Sleep also cleans the brain. When we contract our muscles all day, where does that trash go? To your lymph system. But your brain doesn't have a well-developed lymph system. So at night, it shrinks by almost 30% and allows the cleaning of the brain to happen. These are lay terms, ma'am, please excuse me. And without this cleaning of the brain, plaque forms. And those plaque formations build up and lead to dementia, memory loss, and ultimately Alzheimer's. So your brain has to clean itself, but it has to clean itself by spending a third of your life in bed and asleep. That's what takes the trash out. So nutrition, just the third, I'll just touch on nutrition, how that impacts your brain. Your brain is only 2% of your body weight, but it takes 20% of all energy consumed. So think of it as 1 in 4 calories consumed is needed to fuel your brain. Your blood supply has to have a constant source of fuel in order for your brain to operate. So when you're hungry, how many of you get a little grouchy when you're hungry? I think we call them the hangries. That's what they call them in the military. It's basically your brain telling you, I need food, impacting on your emotions. So you must eat to keep your brain let your brain know that you're not starving and it can keep your energy levels up. And then, of course, activity fuels your brain. In Indiana, some researchers found that if you don't like a class and you're not performing well, if they put students in physical education first, their grades go up significantly. Because your brain lights up immediately after exercise, after activity. We don't like the word exercise. Activity is much more palatable. So that means if you're studying something, you want to take advantage of that golden hour that follows activity, go out for a run or a walk before you study. So take a look at that material on the table and some of those that I put out in the exhibit room, and you can see some of the small changes that can impact your cognitive dominance, your physical supremacy, and your emotional resilience. So these two women, the generals who designed this program and the follow-on general who will maintain it and continue to push it out into the service, they changed the culture of the Army. It was no longer seen to be cool and tough, to push your soldiers to exhaustion, to not get enough sleep, to brag that you did it and just got up an hour ago and you were able to get that long briefing done. It's no longer smart not to eat well. Food is fuel, and you must eat well. Dining facilities, because of her programs, have changed their hours, and their offerings have reflected a much wiser set of choices. Physical training in the military was redesigned to be much more of an integrated program and stop pushing people just to go out and run forever, as tough as you can be. So that's pretty amazing. But then, okay, so enough about science. How did these women impact my life? How did the performance triad impact me and my family? Well, it started in 2009 when I was in Iraq, and my daughter wrote me and said, Mom, when you come home, will you train and run a marathon with me? I'm thinking, you're crazy. And I'm thinking, whatever I tell her, she'll never remember by the time I get home. So I said, sure, I'll be glad to do that. When I returned in late June of 2010, I certainly was a bit disoriented. There's certainly a lot of joy in returning home, but it's not easy to go from almost a year and a half in a combat zone to the streets of Chester County. I was injured in Iraq. My vehicle was hit by a multiple array of rockets, and while I was not seriously injured as so many others were in the vehicle, it was tough on my family. And I didn't realize it was tough on me until I had returned. I was not suffering what I think of as PTSD, but I certainly was very disoriented. And then my daughter came. She had just graduated from college, and she said, Mom, remember, we're going to train for the marathon. My too dumb to say no promise. So we did, in fact, train for a marathon together. I had never run a marathon. I had never even run 8 miles. So that's quite a difference. But we trained, and we trained together. The entire family was involved in this training. And when we did our long runs, as you're training, my husband and my son would ride their bicycles and bring us water and food as we would go through those long runs. And it was wonderful to see them. Usually we were very desperate and wished they had a car instead of a bike so that we could hop in. So I can attest to the principles of the P3 triad because I wasn't feeling real great. So I was looking for a way to help regain my resilience and my strength. And I would say that certainly the principles of this P3 triad, thanks to General Horoho, certainly helped me with my resilience and my wellness. And so I can say without a doubt that following these principles certainly hastened my reintegration, and it helped our family get back together and our family cohesion, and it allowed me to get back to the business of the nation and the needs of my family. So I am very grateful to these two amazing women and their emphasis on wellness. Girls, what are the messages we so often get? Why do you eat well, watch your weight, and exercise? What are the messages women get? Why do we do those things? To look good. Well, General Hiroho changed all that. So now it's about wellness. You will not be a great woman in history unless you take care of the machine that houses your brain and your heart and allows you to contribute all those wonderful things that are in your brain and your heart. So thank you for giving me the time to share that with you.
Who knows what tomorrow brings? In a world where few hearts survive, all I know is the way I feel. When it's real, I'll keep it alive. The road is long, and there are mountains in our way, but we must climb a step every day. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles fly on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong. Far from the world we know, where the clear winds blow, while some hang on to what used to be. They live their lives looking behind. All we have is our here and now. All our life is out there to find. And the road is long. There are mountains in our way, but we must climb a step every day. Love lift us up where we belong, where the eagles fly on a mountain high. Love lift us up where we belong. Far from this world we know, where the clear winds blow. Love lift us up.
Very much. On behalf of County Executive Thomas P. Gordon and Sophia Hansen, we'd like to thank everyone for coming out this afternoon. Hope that you enjoyed yourself and hope that what has been spoken today will encourage you and motivate you to follow your dreams and aspirations in life.